You've been carrying a power inside you that ancient mystics call divine. Not a metaphor, a real energy, coiled, intelligent, alive. But to understand how it works and why it was hidden, we have to go back, way back, before the temples were burned and the teachings erased. What if the very symptoms you've been experiencing, the strange dreams, the heat in your spine, the moments of bliss and fear, are signs that it's already begun? Keep watching, because in the next few minutes, you'll understand why your awakening was never random and why this power chose you. They told you it was symbolic, a myth, an allegory from ancient yoga scrolls that had little place in a modern world. But they were wrong, dead wrong, because what ancient mystics spoke of wasn't just metaphor, it was fire, living, intelligent fire, buried beneath your spine, waiting. They called it Kundalini, a Sanskrit word meaning coiled one. Not because it was dormant, but because it was patient, coiled like a serpent, not to strike it but to awaken. In the ancient temples of India, Egypt, Tibet, even in forgotten tribes of the Andes and the Aboriginal Dreamtime, this force was revered as sacred. It was known to be the divine seed of creation planted inside every human, a bridge between matter and spirit, the fire that could burn through illusion and reveal truth. But here's what they never told you. This fire was hidden on purpose, because a sovereign being, one who awakens the Kundalini, is impossible to control. You see, this power wasn't just spiritual, it was biological, energetic, cosmic. And those who understood its true nature, they could heal bodies, pierce the veil, reshape reality itself, which is why, across history, it was buried, demonized, twisted into fear and superstition. The priests called it dangerous. The empires called it madness. The colonizers called it heresy. And the modern world, they called it hallucination. But none of that was true, because the truth is, your spine was built as a temple. Your breath, a key, and your attention, the match. Kundalini is not just energy, it is remembrance. The moment you stop looking outside for God and start realizing it's been inside you all along. The ancients left clues everywhere, in the coiled snakes of Egyptian staffs, in the twin serpents of the caduceus, in the spirals carved into cave walls and temple pillars. They were trying to tell us, there is something sleeping inside you. And once it awakens, you'll never see life the same again. But here's the part that rattles the bones of the old systems. You don't need a priest. You don't need permission. You only need the courage to look inward and ignite the fire. That's why they hid it, because once this power rises, you don't just become spiritual, you become sovereign. And in a world built on control, that's the most dangerous thing you can be. So the question now isn't if the fire is real. The question is, are you ready to feel it? Welcome to the beginning. And this is only chapter 1. It slithered through Eden and was cursed. It circled the staffs of Hermes and was revered. It shed its skin in ancient temples, coiled around gods, and whispered through dreams. The serpent, once the most sacred of symbols, became the most feared. But why? What could be so threatening about an animal that moves low to the ground, sheds its old self, and rises renewed? Because the snake was never just a creature. It was a metaphor, a cosmic language, a living key to divine transformation. And in nearly every ancient culture, from India to Mesopotamia, from Africa to the Americas, the serpent represented life force, energy, awakening. In the Vedic tradition, Kundalini Shakti is described as a coiled serpent resting at the base of the spine. Not in shame, but in sacred potential. When awakened, it rises, piercing through the chakras, uniting the individual soul with cosmic consciousness. But that truth was dangerous, because a human being in union with divine power needs no priest, no institution, no external savior. And so the serpent, the very essence of inner transformation, was demonized. In Genesis, it becomes the deceiver, the tempter, the reason we fell. But look again, it was the serpent that brought knowledge, that offered awareness, that woke Eve up. Was that fall really a fall? Or was it the first flicker of awakening? They rewrote the story, twisted the metaphor, turned the symbol of liberation into a tool of fear. In Egyptian myth, the uraeus, the upright cobra, was worn on the crown of pharaohs, symbolizing divine authority and awakened consciousness. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was the bringer of wisdom, arts, and light. In the East, Nagas were protectors of sacred knowledge and cosmic balance. Everywhere you look, the serpent is there, until it was erased, until it became a warning. But that lie did not kill the truth. It only buried it. And now, the old symbols are returning. Not in books or temples, but inside of you. Because the serpent never left. It coils at the base of your spine, waiting, not to deceive, but to awaken. And when you begin to see it again, not as evil, but as sacred, you begin to see yourself differently too. You are not a sinner waiting for salvation. You are a soul waiting to rise, and the serpent is your guide. Are you ready to shed the lie and step into the truth? Then keep listening, because this is just the beginning. Long before the modern world named it, mapped it, or tried to dismiss it as myth, the ancients were already dancing with it. They didn't call it Kundalini in every land, but they knew the force. They built temples not just of stone, but of vibration. They carved symbols not just into walls, but into the very currents of human consciousness. In Egypt, beneath the golden sun, the priests of Kemet spoke of Sekhem, a divine life-giving power that flowed through all beings. It rose like fire through the spine, activating the Jed, the sacred pillar, the backbone of Osiris. To raise the Jed was to raise consciousness. Look closer at the pharaoh's crown. That upright cobra wasn't just decoration. It was the serpent of awakened awareness. It meant he had activated the divine within. He had risen. In India, the sages meditated beneath trees, not seeking escape, but ascent. They mapped the chakras, spinning wheels of energy, and spoke of Shakti, coiled like a serpent at the base of the spine. When she awakens, she doesn't just rise, she dances, piercing the illusions of the ego, burning away the false self, and merging with Shiva, pure consciousness at the crown. It was never just philosophy. It was a lived path, a sacred science, an embodied awakening. And across the ocean, the Maya and the Inca revered the feathered serpent, a symbol of wisdom ascending into flight. It crawled on the earth, but carried the knowledge of the heavens. Even in Greece, the staff of Asclepius, serpent coiled around a rod, represented healing, not just of the body, but of the soul's forgotten journey. The serpent showed up everywhere because the energy it symbolized was universal. They knew we were more than flesh. They knew the body was a vessel, a temple, a sacred machine built for transformation. They honored breath, stillness, mantra, movement. not as rituals of worship to something outside, but as technologies to awaken something within. And they passed this knowledge on through symbols, through myth, through sacred initiations, until it was hidden, until conquest and colonization buried the wisdom, until dogma replaced direct experience. But even buried seeds still remember the sun, and now the ancient knowing is returning. Because deep down, you've always known too. You felt it, that stirring at the base of your spine, that longing, that fire. The ancients weren't talking about a metaphor, they were talking about you and the power that's been waiting for you to awaken. Beneath the surface of your life, beneath the roles you play, beneath the noise of what they taught you to chase, she waits, silent, coiled, powerful beyond comprehension. She is not a myth. She is not a metaphor. She is Shakti, the divine feminine force of creation. And she lives in you, not beside you, not above you, within. The sages called her the sleeping goddess, because in most she lies dormant, coiled 3.5 times at the base of the spine, in the sacred space known as the Muladhara, the root. She dreams not with eyes, but with fire, waiting not for time, but for readiness. She is not passive, she is potential itself, the raw, untamed energy of the cosmos, folded into the body of a human. In the tantric traditions, she is revered as the counterpart of Shiva, consciousness itself. But without her movement, Shiva remains still. Without her fire, he is the sky without lightning, the moon without tide. Shakti is movement, vibration, manifestation. And when she awakens, when the call is heard, she begins her sacred ascent, not violently, not always suddenly, but with precision. She rises through the central channel, the Sushumna, piercing each chakra, each veil of illusion, each layer of the self you thought you were. She doesn't just activate energy, she reveals truth. She dissolves the lie of separation between the divine and the human. This is why the awakening can feel like death, because it is the death of the illusion, the shedding of old skins, the collapsing of who you were into who you really are. The serpent isn't evil, she is wisdom. She is the sacred feminine, hidden under centuries of fear and dogma. She is the mother of transformation, and her language is not words, but sensation, intuition, knowing. When you feel the tingling, the sudden clarity, the pull towards stillness, she is whispering. When your body shakes in meditation, or your dreams burn with symbols, or your grief breaks into light, she is moving, and she will not stop until you remember. Remember what? That you are not separate, that you were never powerless, that the temple was always inside you. You are not waiting for her. She is waiting for you to turn inward, to breathe, to open. The sleeping goddess is not asleep because she is weak. She is asleep because the time had not yet come. But now, you've found the doorway, you've heard the call, and somewhere deep in your being, she stirs. This is no longer a story of slumber. This ... is the beginning of her return. You were born with a ladder inside you, not of wood or metal or bone, but of light. It stretches from the base of your spine to the crown of your head, then beyond. A bridge between the earth and the stars, between survival and transcendence, between matter and meaning. This is not metaphor. This is the ancient architecture of your being. The rishis of India didn't guess it. They saw it. In deep states of meditation, when the breath slowed, when the mind dissolved, they encountered a subtle body, glowing with radiant wheels of energy. Chakra, it means wheel in Sanskrit, not flat wheels, but spinning vortices, living portals, each one a center of consciousness, a gate of memory, a note in the divine song of who you are. 7 main chakras, 7 keys to your awakening. The root, Muladhara, red, grounded, survival. The first memory, I exist. Then the sacral, Svadhisthana, orange, fluid, emotion. The memory, I feel. Then the solar plexus, Manipura, yellow, fire, willpower. I act. The heart, Anahata, green, love, compassion. I love. The throat, Vishuddha, blue, truth, expression. I speak. The third eye, Ajna, indigo, vision, intuition. I see. And the crown, Sahasrara, violet or white, transcendence, oneness. I am. Each one holds a layer of your story, each one a fragment of your forgotten self. And when Shakti awakens, she climbs this ladder of light, not randomly, not recklessly, but in sacred rhythm, one gate at a time, one truth after another. Sometimes she pauses, sometimes she storms, but always she purifies. She burns what no longer serves. She restores what was buried, and she sings the soul back to its center. Modern science may call it metaphor, but ancient Egypt, Tibet, Mesopotamia, all had their own versions. Energy centers, sacred geometry, the subtle anatomy of awakening. This ladder of light is not just inside you, it is you. And every time you choose truth, every time you choose love over fear, presence over distraction, stillness over reaction, you rise, not up, but inward. This is not ascent for escape. It's ascent for embodiment, to remember who you were before the world told you otherwise. You were born with a ladder. You don't have to build it, only climb it, with breath, with courage, with surrender. And as you rise, you'll see, you were never just flesh. You were the flame that the flesh tried to hold. And now, the flame is remembering how to burn. Beneath the skin, beneath the muscle and marrow, there is a sacred architecture, a column of light disguised as bone. The spine, that which allows you to stand, to bend, to move through life, is more than biology. It is a temple, a conduit, a divine bridge between earth and the infinite. For thousands of years, mystics from different traditions whispered the same truth, that within this spinal temple flows an unseen current, a divine electricity known not by the mind, but by the soul. In yogic science, it is called Sushumna, the central channel. Alongside it spiral 2 sacred currents, Ida and Pingala, weaving through the chakras like serpents dancing in cosmic rhythm. Modern science sees the spine as a structure, vertebrae, discs, nerves. But ancient wisdom saw something else, a throne for the divine, a sacred staff upon which the Kundalini serpent climbs when the soul is ready to awaken. You were told that the sacred lives outside you, in distant heavens, in temples made of stone, but the sages knew better. The body was the temple, the breath was the prayer, and the spine, the altar upon which the fire of transformation would rise. That's why the ancients spoke of the spine as the danda, the staff of inner power. It wasn't metaphor, it was memory. In Egypt, the Jed pillar represented stability and resurrection, a spinal symbol tied to Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. In China, Taoist alchemists mapped the microcosmic orbit, circulating energy up the spine and down the front of the body to refine the soul. In Kabbalah, the tree of life is mirrored in the human form, its branches and paths aligned along the very same column. So many cultures, so many systems, but all pointing to one thing: you are wired for the divine. And this ladder was never random. Each vertebra, each center of energy, each breath, all part of a design far older than any religion. A design built for ascension, not escape from the world, but embodiment of the divine within it. But here's the tragedy. In modern times, the spine is treated like an inconvenience, bent by chairs, numbed by screens, disconnected from breath and sensation. We forgot the prayer hidden in posture, the power of simply sitting tall, breathing deep, aligning heaven and earth through the temple within. And yet, the body remembers. You felt it, haven't you? That tingling when truth rises, that shiver when you hear something ancient, that moment when your whole being straightens, not by command, but by resonance. The spine responds, the current stirs, and for a moment, you are aligned. The spine is not just a support, it is a signal, a sacred antenna tuning you to divine frequency. And when you begin to walk with reverence for this temple, the electricity begins to rise, and the sleeping goddess begins to stir. There comes a moment when the serpent reaches the crown, not just in story, not just in symbol, but within you. After rising from the root, passing through the sacred gateways, winding through the temple of the spine, the Kundalini fire touches the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus at the crown of the head, and in that moment, the soul remembers its source. In yogic teachings, the Sahasrara is not merely the top of the head, it is the doorway between form and formlessness, the bridge between the self you think you are and the self that has no name. It is where Shakti, the coiled feminine force of the earth, reunites with Shiva, the divine stillness of the cosmos. And it is not a myth, it is a map. Shiva and Shakti are not just deities, they are principles, polarities, sacred currents of being. Shakti is energy in motion, the divine pulse of life itself. Shiva is silence, the vastness in which all arises and returns. When Kundalini ascends and touches the crown, these two forces, once split, become whole again. And when they do, your perception collapses into something unimaginable. The illusion of separation dissolves. The self and the universe become one breath. In neuroscience, this moment resembles a flood of gamma waves, brain activity synchronized across all regions, producing feelings of timelessness, bliss, and unity. Mystics call it samadhi. The Tibetans describe it as rigpa, the awakened awareness. Saints across cultures have touched it. Rumi, Teresa of Avila, Ramana Maharshi, all describing a moment where the self melted, and only light remained. But this light was never far. It was always above you, within you, waiting. And the serpent. The serpent was not evil. It was the guide, the reminder, the sacred fire that burns away illusion and delivers the soul to the crown of truth. But here's what they never told you. This awakening is not the end. It is the beginning. Because once the serpent touches source, something else happens. The light that floods in, it doesn't stay at the top. It begins to descend, to pour back through the body, to sanctify the heart, to ignite the hands, to transform how you walk, how you love, how you speak, how you serve. Enlightenment is not escape, it is embodiment. The fire rises and the light returns. And when the crown opens, not with force, but with surrender, when the divine masculine welcomes the divine feminine, you don't vanish into bliss. You awaken within it. You are no longer the seeker. You are the flame. And your life becomes the temple. This is not a destination. It is the return to what was always sacred, a homecoming written in light, a union that was never truly lost. Let the fire rise, let the light descend, and let the remembering begin. They told you it was dangerous, that to go within too deeply was to lose your way. That silence would invite darkness. That stillness would make you vulnerable. That questioning the outer world would lead you into the hands of something sinister. But this was never about protecting you. It was about protecting the illusion. Because when you awaken the sacred power within, you become uncontrollable, not wild, not chaotic, but sovereign. And nothing terrifies an empire more than a sovereign soul. Across centuries, from Rome to the Raj, from cathedrals to colonial courts, a quiet war was waged. Not with swords, but with stories. They rewrote the symbols, demonized the goddess, erased the serpent, and buried the body's wisdom beneath layers of sin and shame. Why? Because the true activation of Kundalini was the unraveling of control. It didn't make you obedient. It didn't keep you small. It connected you directly to the divine. Without a priest, without an institution, without a middleman. You didn't need salvation. You remembered you were sacred. Ancient yogis knew this. Mystics whispered it in secret. The Gnostics encoded it in symbols. The Tantrics danced with it in fire. And every time the system caught wind of it, it burned the books, silenced the seers, and taught the masses to fear their own spine. They said the serpent was evil. They made the feminine suspicious. They called the inner realms blasphemous. But if it were truly meaningless, why go through so much trouble to erase it? Because it was never meaningless. It was dangerous. To them, a soul ignited from within is not easily manipulated. A being who has tasted source does not bow to systems. The suppression of Kundalini was not random. It was precise. It was targeted. And it worked. Most people go their entire lives never knowing what breath can do. Never knowing the spine is a pillar of light. Never knowing that energy flows in spirals, not lines. And that within them is a sleeping fire that remembers heaven. But it is waking again, through whispers, through dreams, through this very moment. Because once the truth has been seen, it cannot be unseen. And once the serpent stirs, no dogma can stop her rise. So if you've ever felt like the world wasn't telling you everything, if you've ever wondered why the most sacred teachings were always hidden, it's because power was never meant to be given. It was meant to be reclaimed. And that reclamation begins in you. To understand why Kundalini was hidden, you must understand what the West was building. A world where only what could be seen was real. Where mystery was dissected, where the sacred was turned into science, and then into silence. It began not with hatred, but with a hunger for control, a desire to measure the infinite, to place spirit under a microscope, to turn the soul into a statistic. In this new world, the body was a machine, the mind a computer, and consciousness a side effect. Not a mystery, not a miracle, just neurons firing in the dark. The serpent didn't fit. The chakras couldn't be mapped with wires. The rise of Shakti could not be explained in formulas. So they dismissed it, mocked it, pathologized it, what the sages called awakening. Modern psychiatry began to call psychosis. Visions were hallucinations. Energetic tremors were seizures. Mystical states became medical emergencies. And the moment a soul cracked open in ecstasy, it was rushed to the nearest institution, diagnosed, sedated, and labeled broken. But they weren't broken. They were breaking through layers of numbness, through the cold, clinical veil that told them they were only flesh, through the lie that said energy didn't exist because it couldn't be sold. And yet, every ancient tradition knew it did. The Chinese spoke of qi, the Egyptians of Sekhem, the yogis of prana, the Hebrews of ruach, life force, the breath of the divine, the sacred current that animates all things. But in the Western world, where profit replaced presence and power replaced prayer, that current was seen as a threat, not because it was false, but because it was free. You couldn't bottle Kundalini. You couldn't tax enlightenment. You couldn't regulate a soul's awakening. So they buried it beneath layers of ridicule, wrapped it in words like New Age nonsense or spiritual hysteria. And slowly, the collective forgot that the body could tremble with God, that the spine could sing, that fire could rise. And it wasn't a disease, it was a remembrance. This is the Western war on energy, not fought with weapons, but with words. Not fought in battlefields, but in classrooms, clinics, and churches. And the cost has been great, because when a culture kills the sacred, it doesn't just lose God. It loses itself. But you are here because something in you remembers. The serpent stirs, the current returns, and the war begins to end, not through revolt, but through remembrance. And remembrance is how you begin to rise. So what happens when it finally stirs? When the serpent uncoils from the base of your spine and begins her ancient ascent? It is not always gentle. It is not always easy, but it is always sacred. Kundalini is the fire you were born with, dormant, not dead, silent, not gone. She waits, coiled, intelligent, divine. And when she rises, she speaks, not in words, but in energy, in waves, in visions, in tremors that shake loose everything false and leave only truth. The body becomes the altar, and suddenly it begins. Heat at the base of the spine, a pulsing sensation in the sacrum, sometimes pleasure, sometimes pressure, a vibration that climbs, not through muscles, but through memory. Your breath may deepen without command. Your heart may race, not from fear, but from something older. Recognition, because this isn't new, it's ancient, and your soul knows it. You may see colors with your eyes closed, hear tones in the silence, feel tingles through the crown of your head, like rain from another dimension. There may be tears, not of sadness, but release. Emotions long buried may surface. Lifetimes may flash before you. Old pain may rise, to finally be transmuted. You may laugh without reason, cry without cause, shake, collapse, rise again. This is not madness. This is the body remembering what divinity feels like. The chakras activate. The spine becomes a river. And the serpent climbs from root to crown, clearing what was blocked, awakening what was asleep. The mind quiets. The ego panics, but the soul rejoices. And then gifts begin to appear. Intuition sharpens. Synchronicities increase. Dreams become prophetic. The veil between dimensions thins. You are no longer just in the world. You are in both worlds, 1 foot in the visible, 1 in the invisible. You may feel energy around others, see auras, sense truth behind words. Your nervous system adapts. Your senses heighten. You begin to feel life again, not just live it. But with this awakening comes responsibility, for not all is bliss. The fire burns what is false. The light reveals the shadow, and the journey is not linear. Some days you will fly, other days you will fall apart. Both are holy, because this is not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human, fully awake, fully alive. This is what happens when Kundalini awakens. Not a theory, not a metaphor, but a living force inside you. So if you're feeling it, you're not broken. You're being born. And this is the beginning of a different kind of life. One where fire becomes teacher and your body becomes sacred ground. Let it rise. Let it teach you. Let it remember you. Sometimes the light doesn't arrive as warmth. It arrives as fire, as rupture, as everything falling apart. So something ancient can fall into place. This is the mystery most teachers forget to tell. That before the serpent rises freely, it writhes. Before the soul awakens, the identity must die. The Kundalini path is not a gentle stroll through bliss. It is a sacred burning, a holy descent before the ascent. And it begins, more often than not, in the dark. When this energy begins to stir, truly stir, your body may ache. Your thoughts may spiral. Old traumas, long buried, may surge to the surface. You might feel like you're losing your mind, but you're not. You're shedding it. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And the serpent, coiled at the base of your spine, knows this well. It does not simply gift you power, it demands purification. This is why many speak of the dark night of the soul, a phase where the outer world no longer fits, but the new self has not yet emerged. It is the void, the hallway, the tremble between what was and what must now be born. Your body might purge, emotionally, physically, even energetically. Your dreams may become vivid. Your heart might race for no reason. Or perhaps the tears will come, unprovoked and unexplainable. Don't run, don't numb. Don't try to force your old self to survive this sacred storm. Because this is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough, wearing the mask of madness. In ancient yogic texts, they warned that Kundalini rising without proper preparation could be destabilizing. And they were right. But they didn't mean you weren't worthy. They meant you must be willing. Willing to meet what is hidden inside you and sit with it until the fire becomes a flame of truth. This is where the ego trembles, where the roles, masks, and false comforts peel away, and what remains is raw, real, radiant. Because in this sacred disintegration, you are not being punished, you are being revealed. Think of a snake shedding its skin. Think of a phoenix in flames. Think of every myth where the hero descends before rising. This is not the end. This is the threshold. Kundalini doesn't destroy you. It dissolves what you are not. And every tremor, every shadow, every moment of fear is part of the fire that forges the real you. So when the pain comes, honor it. When the fear whispers, listen, but do not obey. Because behind it all, the light is waiting, and it is not coming from above. It's rising from within. What if I told you, Kundalini is not just energy, not a mere force, not static, not blind. but something far more sacred, something alive. Kundalini is a divine intelligence, a cosmic memory, a living current of source consciousness, embedded deep within your being. And when it rises, it does not move randomly. It moves with intention, with purpose, with direction, as if it knows exactly where you must go, even if you don't. This is not like flipping a light switch. This is like waking a sleeping dragon, a serpent that has always been watching, always waiting. And when she stirs, she begins to unravel the lies. She doesn't ask you what you want. She begins to reveal what your soul needs. It's easy to think of Kundalini as a power, something to use, to master, to channel. But that's the illusion. You don't use Kundalini. She uses you to purify, to realign, to return you to what is real. In ancient tantric texts, she is referred to as Shakti, the divine feminine force of creation itself, the pulse behind every heartbeat, the intelligence behind the breath, the spirit behind evolution. She is not neutral, she is holy. And within her movement lies sacred memory, a record of your soul's long journey through lifetimes. She knows what you carry. She knows what must be released. She knows who you really are beneath the noise. That's why, when Kundalini awakens, your life changes. Not because you decided it, but because something ancient within you remembered. You may begin to say no to what once seemed normal. You may be pulled toward unfamiliar places, teachings, people. Synchronicities increase. Old wounds resurface, not to punish, but to be healed. Because she's not just climbing your spine. She's reading it. She's scanning your soul. And she's guiding you, not toward comfort, but toward wholeness. Modern science may try to explain it as neurological phenomena. They may label the symptoms, dissect the brain patterns. But what they miss is the heart of the mystery. Kundalini is not a glitch in the system. She is the original design. Every ancient culture had a name for her. In Egypt, the Uraeus, the cobra of illumination. In China, the Shen rising up the spine. In Sufi mysticism, the divine fire in the heart. All describing the same thing, a sacred intelligence inside the human form, longing to wake, and once awakened, she doesn't stop, because she came not to give you power, but to return you to it, not to inflate the ego, but to dissolve it, not to perform miracles, but to remind you that you are one. This is not just energy. This is divinity in motion. There are symbols older than language, older than empires, older than belief. They whisper through the ages, etched in stone, painted on scrolls, encoded in dreams. And yet, today, we pass them without seeing. The serpent, the circle, the staff with twin snakes spiraling toward wings. These are not random images. They are ancient signatures of a truth humanity once knew, and then forgot. The cobra, coiled and rising, crowned above the brows of Egyptian pharaohs. Not a symbol of fear, but of divine awakening. It guarded the brow chakra, the third eye, representing the surge of sacred energy from the base of the spine to the seat of higher vision. The Uraeus, they called it, the awakened fire, living proof that the ruler was not just political, but spiritual, enlightened, anointed by the serpent of divine sight. Then there is the Ouroboros, a serpent devouring its own tail, endless, cyclical, a cosmic loop that echoes the eternal dance of death and rebirth, destruction and creation, dissolution and renewal. But more than that, The Ouroboros represents containment of the sacred current, a teaching hidden in plain sight, that the energy of the divine must flow within a purified vessel, or else it devours itself. And then the caduceus. Today, we see it on ambulances and hospitals. Two serpents coiled around a staff, wings at the crown. Modern medicine calls it a logo, but the ancients called it a map. The staff is the spine. The serpents, Ida and Pingala, the twin energy currents. The wings, consciousness, liberated and awakened. Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus. In Greek myth, it was carried by Hermes, the messenger between worlds. In esoteric schools, it is the spinal ladder of light, the blueprint of awakening, of Kundalini. So why are these symbols everywhere, yet their meaning erased? Why are we taught they are decorative when they are clearly directive? Because symbols speak directly to the soul. They bypass logic. They awaken memory. They activate the ancient. And that is dangerous to systems built on forgetting. You see, modern culture didn't just lose the knowledge, it buried it. It mocked the serpent. It sterilized the staff. It turned the Ouroboros into myth. And in doing so, it severed humanity's link to the sacred within. But something in you still remembers. You feel the symbols stir when you see them. You feel the pull, like a forgotten word trying to return to your tongue. Like a secret tattoo beneath your skin. Because this wisdom was never just outside you. It was encoded in you. The serpent, the circle, the wings, they are not decoration. They are invitation. And the moment you remember what they mean, the ancient becomes active, the forgotten becomes alive, and your awakening begins again. Some truths cannot be rushed, and some awakenings are not gifts. They are initiations, ordeals. The serpent, sacred, coiled, and silent, does not rise just because you want her to. She waits, she listens, she tests, because this power, it is not casual. It is not decoration for the ego. It is fire, living, divine, intelligent fire. And fire, unearned, burns. This is why, in the ancient temples, the seekers were purified before the teachings were ever whispered. Not just through chants or fasting, but through life itself, through heartbreak, through loss, through letting go of all the masks, the cleverness, the control, the craving, because the serpent knows. She senses motive. She is drawn not to ambition, but to surrender. If you seek her to gain power over others, she remains still. If you seek her to elevate your pride, she coils tighter. But if you kneel inwardly, if you break and still breathe, if you ache and still trust, then she listens. You don't summon the serpent. You become the kind of being she wants to rise through. That's why so many experience nothing, even when they try the postures, the breath, the mantras, because without humility, the sacred remains sealed. And humility does not mean weakness. It means reverence. It means bowing before the mystery and knowing you are not the source. You are the vessel. In the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad, it is said that only the pure and disciplined mind can carry the force. Otherwise, the awakening shatters rather than sanctifies. It is not punishment, it is protection. Imagine placing lightning inside a cracked cup. It doesn't illuminate, it explodes. So the serpent waits, not out of cruelty, but out of sacred care. She rises through alignment, not ambition, through devotion, not demand. And often, her greatest lessons come not from the rise, but from the waiting. Because in the waiting, you are made ready. You are stripped of delusion. You are taught patience, silence, depth. And by the time the fire stirs, you are no longer asking when. You are whispering, thank you. You begin to see the delays were initiations. The longing was preparation. The stillness was mercy. Not everyone is ready. And that's okay, because when you truly are, you won't need to force. The serpent will know, and you will be worthy. Not all serpents are sacred, and not all awakenings are real. Because where there is light, there is imitation, and where there is truth, there is always a counterfeit. This is the false Kundalini trap. It looks powerful. It feels electric. It speaks of ascension, of mastery, of immediate transformation. But it bypasses the most important thing: purification. In the ancient teachings, power was never divorced from integrity. The rise of Kundalini was never about fireworks. It was about liberation, the kind that takes everything from you, illusions, attachments, pride, and burns them clean. But in today's spiritual market, Kundalini has become a shortcut, a thrill, a spectacle. There are workshops promising full activation in a weekend, techniques offering instant results, and people chasing the serpent like a drug, craving the rush, the visions, the psychic gifts, but without spiritual preparation. What rises is not always holy. It may be energy, yes, but energy amplified in an unready vessel can distort the mind, fracture the emotions, and magnify whatever is unresolved. This is why ancient masters warned of premature awakening. Swami Sivananda said, Kundalini should not be awakened forcibly. It will cause serious nervous disorders. And the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad echoes it. When the Kundalini is aroused without proper guidance, it can create delusion, not illumination. Because what rises reflects you. If there is ego, it inflates it. If there is fear, it intensifies it. If there is shadow, it gives it teeth. This is the trap. Mistaking intensity for divinity, mistaking stimulation for sacredness. And yet, this doesn't mean Kundalini is dangerous. It means it's holy. Holy things demand respect, not urgency, not entitlement, but reverence. You don't climb the ladder of light by skipping steps. You climb it by becoming light. And that means shadow work. That means devotion. That means burning away what is false before claiming what is true. The false Kundalini mimics the signs, but not the transformation. It gives you sensation, but not liberation. You may feel powerful, but if your heart is not softer, if your presence is not deeper, if your life is not more aligned, then nothing sacred has truly risen. Kundalini is not a party trick. She is the Divine Mother, the hidden gate, the spine of the soul. Approach her with hunger, and she waits. Approach her with humility, and she answers. So ask yourself, are you chasing the fire or preparing to become its temple? That answer makes all the difference. They told you the breath was just biology, a mechanical exchange of oxygen, an unconscious rhythm in the background of life. But the ancients knew better. They knew the breath was the bridge, the current, the sacred invitation. In India, it was called pranayama, the control of prana, or life force, not just inhaling air, but summoning light, directing it with intention, creating an internal alchemy that could unlock the serpent's path. In China, it was qigong, the cultivation of qi, the subtle energy that animates all things. Practitioners moved with grace, breathed with reverence, and awakened dormant channels within. across traditions, across continents, from yogic caves to Taoist temples, from indigenous rituals to mystic lineages long erased. The breath was never ordinary. It was the key, because the breath is what softens the armor. It untangles the fear in the belly. It releases the grief held in the lungs. And it calms the mind just long enough for the serpent to stir. You see, Kundalini does not rise with force, not when called correctly. She rises with stillness, with purity, with presence, and the breath, when done with devotion, becomes a sacred drumbeat, calling her gently, lovingly, like a hymn remembering its source. Some lineages teach the Kundalini breath of fire, rapid, rhythmic, intense. Others teach long, slow inhalations, guided through each chakra, activating the spine like a ladder lit from within. But it is not the technique alone that matters. It is the state you breathe from. If you breathe from ego, she will not come. If you breathe to impress or to conquer or to demand, she will stay coiled. But if your breath becomes a prayer, if each inhale is a surrender and each exhale a release of who you are not, then something begins to move, subtle at first, like a whisper brushing against the inside of your ribs, a tingle along the base of the spine, a warmth where there was once only numbness. This is not fantasy. This is physiology braided with spirit. It is how mystics accessed altered states without plants, without chance, without external stimulation. Just breathe, and presence, and devotion. The breath, beloved, is the invitation and the preparation. It clears the path before the serpent walks it. It purifies the field before the goddess arrives. And it roots you in the present, where all true awakening begins. You don't need to climb a mountain. You don't need to chant in Sanskrit. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to breathe and mean it. And when that breath becomes sacred, you'll find she was listening all along. She was never asleep. She was waiting for the right rhythm, the one only your soul could remember. Let's keep breathing. They talk about the serpent. They talk about the fire. They talk about the spine, the chakras, the crown. But they forget the heart. And when the heart is forgotten, Kundalini becomes a flame without a compass. It burns, yes, but it does not bless. Because without the heart, awakening turns into ambition. Power replaces presence. Mysticism becomes performance. And the sacred path becomes a stage. This is the danger, the silent distortion, the reason some awaken only to inflate the very ego they were meant to dissolve. You see, the serpent rises through the heart for a reason. Not around it, not above it, through it. Because the heart is the gatekeeper. It is where power is tested for purity, where fire must pass through water and become light. In ancient Tantra, the Anahata Chakra was the place of unstruck sound, the sacred tone that echoes before words, before thought, before desire. It is in this space that the divine breathes, where compassion is not performance, but presence, where love is not emotion, but union. Without heart, Kundalini energy amplifies whatever is unhealed. If there is ego, it will become grandiosity. If there is control, it will become spiritual manipulation. If there is fear, it will be masked as power. This is why some who awaken too fast begin to speak with authority, but lose their gentleness. They move energy, but forget the soul. The true rise is not up, it is through grief, through tenderness, through the ache of remembering everything you once forgot. And the heart, the sacred lotus in the center of the chest, holds the memory of your original self. It knows what to do with power. It does not hoard it. It does not worship it. It gives it back to the earth, to the beloved, to the silence. In the Gnostic texts, the Christ is not a figure of belief, but of integration, the one who bridges light and body, spirit and form. And where does he dwell? Within the heart. In Sufism too, the Qalb, the spiritual heart, is the throne of God. It is not the intellect that sees God. It is not even the soul. It is the heart that recognizes him, because it remembers. And so, beloved, let the serpent rise. Yes, but let her be met by the rose. Let power fall in love with softness. Let your energy be wrapped in warmth. Let the crown be crowned by the heart, because without the heart, you may awaken power, but you will not awaken love. And in the end, what is divine union without love? Let us rise gently. Let us awaken, truly. Let us return through the center. When everything falls apart, that is when the sacred begins to whisper. The house crumbles. The job vanishes. The love you thought would last forever walks away. And you, stunned and hollow, are left staring at the ruins of what you thought was your life. But beneath the devastation, something stirs. Ancient spiritual traditions have long known that awakening often begins in collapse. In Hinduism, the goddess Kali destroys not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. The old must be burned for the true to rise. In shamanic cultures, crisis is not pathology. It is initiation. It is the soul saying, now you are ready. Kundalini is not gentle when it must break through your resistance. It does not wait for permission. It arrives like a fire in the night, illuminating what was hidden and burning away what no longer serves. This energy, sacred, primal, and intelligent, knows exactly what parts of you must fall before the real you can rise. Carl Jung called it individuation, the painful process of becoming whole, not perfect, whole. During these moments, synchronicities multiply. The number patterns, the dreams, the right book falling off the shelf, the strange encounter on a street corner that leaves you changed. These are not random. They are the breadcrumbs left by your deeper self, the trail guiding you home through the storm. Your ego calls it chaos. Your soul calls it the path. You may feel like you are dying, and in a way you are. Not physically, but symbolically. The false identity, the smallness, the mask you've worn to survive, it is being torn away, and in its place, something luminous begins to emerge. Many mistake this pain for failure, but mystics know. It is labor. It is birth. The contractions of the old world making space for the arrival of your higher self. This is why Kundalini is not a toy, not a hack, not a shortcut. It is a holy fire, and fire always purifies before it illuminates. If you are in the middle of this chaos, do not run, do not numb, breathe, listen. Pay attention to the symbols, the gut feelings, the words that repeat in your mind. This is not coincidence, it is choreography. And though it hurts, you are not being punished, you are being initiated. Because before you can rise, you must remember what you truly are. Not broken, not lost, becoming. And that is where the miracle begins. Everything in creation is made of two forces. Call them light and shadow, sun and moon, masculine and feminine. In the yogic tradition, Shiva and Shakti. Shakti is movement, power, the divine feminine coiled like a serpent at the base of your spine, dreaming. Shiva is stillness, consciousness, the divine masculine that waits above, silent, infinite, untouched. And Kundalini is the story of their reunion. This energy is not just a current of light. It is a love story unfolding inside you. The serpent doesn't just rise. She rises to meet her beloved, to return to him, to awaken both forces within you and bring them into union. In Tantra, this is not metaphor. It is sacred biology. The body itself becomes the temple. The chakras become altars. The breath becomes the priest. And the rising energy, the prayer. As Kundalini rises, she pierces the inner gates, awakening both the wild and the wise. She is fierce and fluid. He is still and vast. Together they do not cancel each other. They complete each other. And when they merge at the crown, there is no longer separation, no longer division between spirit and matter. Heaven and earth kiss inside your body. But this sacred marriage is not just about energy or sensation. It is transformation. The masculine within you, the part that seeks to control, to dominate, to calculate, learns to surrender, to trust, to feel. And the feminine within you, the part that may have been silenced, suppressed, or wounded, is restored, respected, exalted. This is not gender. This is essence. It is what mystics called the hieros gamos, the sacred inner marriage. And once it happens within, it changes everything without. You no longer seek wholeness in another. You become the wholeness you were chasing. You stop projecting the divine onto others, and remember, it lives inside you. This is why Kundalini is more than just energy. It is a remembrance of balance, of harmony, of the cosmic order that lives in your spine. And when Shiva and Shakti dance again within you, you don't just feel different. You see the world differently. The duality fades, the war ends, and what remains is love. A love that is vast, sacred, unbreakable. Because it was never about escaping your humanity. It was about embodying the divine. Right here, right now, inside you. There is a secret that trembles just beneath the surface of desire. It has nothing to do with lust, and everything to do with divinity. The ancient sages knew this. They didn't see sexuality as shameful. They saw it as sacred, as a gateway, as a key, because energy is energy. And the most potent energy in the human body is sexual. It is creative. It is primal. It is the force of life itself. And when guided with awareness, it becomes divine. This is the heart of sacred sexuality. Tantric traditions, especially in ancient India and Tibet, taught that Kundalini could be awakened not through repression, but through reverence, through union, through the conscious merging of polarities, masculine and feminine, giver and receiver, electric and magnetic, not to take, but to transcend, not to indulge, but to awaken. Tantra is not about technique, it's about presence. It's not about performance, it's about surrender. In the sacred union, the body becomes a vessel, the breath becomes prayer, touch becomes transmission, and climax becomes communion. The serpent stirs not because she is forced, but because she is seen, honored, loved. In these moments, the physical dissolves into the spiritual. Time stops, ego fades, and what remains is oneness. But this path is not casual. It requires purification, intention, devotion. Because if you chase the fire without a heart to hold it, you will burn. But if you enter with humility, if you approach the sacred flame not as a thief, but as a priest, then something ancient opens within you. A memory, a knowing, a light. Sacred sexuality was once honored in temples, practiced by initiates, guarded by priestesses who understood that the body was not an obstacle to spirit, but a doorway. and Kundalini was the flame that lit the way. But over centuries, this wisdom was hidden, demonized, buried beneath fear, control, and cultural shame. The serpent became sin, pleasure became guilt, and the body, once a cathedral of divine fire, was reduced to flesh and taboo. But the truth was never erased, only hidden, waiting for you to remember. That sacred sexuality is not about doing, it's about being. It's about becoming a channel for love, for power, for God. When Shakti rises to meet Shiva in the temple of the body, when presence meets breath and love meets stillness, something eternal ignites, not just in you, but through you. This is not new. It is ancient. It is holy. And it was never lost, only waiting for you to listen. Not everyone who offers you light is showing you the way. Some carry torches to guide, others to blind. On the path of Kundalini, there is no shortage of teachers, masters, or mystics who claim to hold the key. Some are sincere, some are misguided, and some are simply playing roles in a much larger test. Because when the serpent begins to stir, so too do the shadows. This journey attracts more than just wisdom. It attracts projection, power plays, false promises, and spiritual performance dressed in sacred robes. But if you're listening closely, truly listening, you'll begin to hear the difference. Authentic guidance never demands your power. It reflects it back to you. It does not coerce, control, or seduce through fear or mystique. Instead, it challenges you lovingly. It calls you inward, not outward, and it reminds you of your own authority, not its own. Real teachers walk with you, not above you. They do not confuse hierarchy with devotion or charisma with clarity. In fact, the greatest guides are often invisible, humble, anonymous. They are the ones who point to the divine, then step out of the way. But there are others, the tricksters, the ego-driven avatars, the light-wrapped deceptions who speak of unity while building empires of self-importance. They may speak the language of awakening, but their frequency reveals another song. Kundalini is not just about energy, it's about discernment. And this is one of the greatest initiations, because your awakening will bring you to crossroads, to ashrams, to YouTube gurus, to seductive systems that offer you shortcuts, titles, and transcendence in 3 easy steps. But the fire doesn't take shortcuts. The serpent doesn't rise for show. And no certificate can summon what only the soul can invite. So how do you know? How do you tell the sacred from the staged, the true path from the trendy one? Start with your body, your breath, your heart. Real teachings resonate in your bones. They don't just sound good. They feel true. They bring a sacred discomfort, not anxiety. They challenge your ego while feeding your spirit. And they return you to stillness, not dependency. The false path will flatter. It will entertain. It will offer you cosmic status without the descent. But Kundalini is a descent before it is a rise, a death before rebirth. It asks everything, not just your attention, but your surrender. And real teachers, they'll remind you of that. They won't ask to be worshipped. They'll ask if you've met your own soul yet. They'll walk you to the riverbank, hand you the mirror, and say, "Now look." This is not a path for followers. It's a path for rememberers. And the only true master is within. Are you listening? Are you watching the mirrors? Because they're everywhere now, even here, even now. There's something unmistakable in the eyes of someone who's touched the fire. Not fear, not pride, but stillness. a quiet awe that says, I have seen behind the veil, and I will never be the same, because when the serpent rises, she doesn't just change the spine, she transforms the gaze. Throughout history, mystics, saints, and seekers have described the same invisible light, not metaphor, but an embodied flame. In the silence of their retreats, in the chaos of their collapse, in the mundane rhythms of daily life, something awakened, and they became something else. In 1937, a young Indian philosopher named Gopi Krishna described it this way. A stream of liquid light rose from the base of my spine, rushed toward my head, and exploded into 1,000 suns. He had not taken any substance. He had not sought the experience. He had simply entered a depth of meditation that triggered what the ancients called Kundalini Shakti. It did not ask for permission. It moved as if it had been waiting. For months, Gopi Krishna was disoriented. Visions, trances, physical upheaval, bliss followed by unbearable agony. He thought he was dying, but he wasn't. He was being rewired. His nervous system, his energy field, his consciousness, all rearranged by something older than doctrine, deeper than belief. And he was not alone. In the deserts of Egypt, in the caves of Tibet, in the hearts of those who never wrote books or gave sermons, there are thousands, perhaps millions, who have met the serpent and lived to speak of it. A woman in Brazil who fell into spontaneous trance after a heartbreak. She had never heard the word Kundalini, but she began seeing visions of light coiling through her spine. She spoke languages she'd never learned. She drew sacred geometry she couldn't explain, and all she wanted was silence. A man in Morocco, whose near-death experience opened his crown and set his body on fire for 3 days. Doctors found nothing, but he knew. A presence had awakened within him, and it was not his mind. These are not hallucinations, not psychosis, but awakenings misunderstood by a world that fears what it cannot name. That's why we rarely hear these stories, because those who carry the fire often go quiet, not out of shame, but reverence. They know the serpent is not for spectacle. She is for transformation, and those who truly meet her never seek to impress. They seek to serve. So if you've ever felt something stir in you, something ancient, electric, terrifying and holy, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not crazy. You are being invited, because behind the serpent's eyes, there is memory. And once she looks at you, you will never forget her gaze. They never wanted you to know, not because it wasn't real, but because it was. Because if you understood the power that sleeps within you, the energy curled like a serpent at the base of your spine, you would no longer be controllable. You wouldn't need their temples. You wouldn't obey their kings. You wouldn't fear their gods. You'd realize you are the temple. You are the fire. You are the divine spark they tried to bury beneath centuries of silence. The erasure of Kundalini wasn't an accident. It was a design. From the fall of the ancient matriarchal temples to the rise of empire religions, a war was waged, not just on land or people, but on the inner world. In early Mesopotamia and Egypt, the serpent was sacred. It was the sign of royalty, rebirth, wisdom. The uraeus, the upright cobra on the pharaoh's crown, was not decorative. It was symbolic of awakened consciousness, divine authority rooted in spiritual mastery, not political force. But when power changed hands, when conquest replaced initiation, the story changed. The serpent became a villain. In the book of Genesis, The snake is no longer a symbol of knowledge, but a deceiver, a tempter, a cursed being cast to crawl on its belly, forever separated from divinity. Why? Because the serpent offered knowledge, not blind belief. Because it whispered, "You are more than they've told you." And that was dangerous. The Gnostics knew this. The Essenes, the Tantricos, the Taoist sages, they preserved what they could, encoded it in symbols, rituals, hidden texts. But still, the great forgetting came. Rome crushed the mystics. The church rewrote the teachings. Colonizers burned the scrolls. And slowly, the memory of the inner fire was turned into heresy. Even in modern times, those who speak of Kundalini are often ridiculed, labeled as fringe, delusional, or unstable. Because if society took this seriously, everything would have to change. Education would have to center consciousness. Medicine would have to embrace energy. Religion would have to surrender hierarchy. And governments would lose their favorite tools, fear and division. So instead, they fed you stories. Stories that made you feel small, separate, dependent on intermediaries to reach the divine. But the serpent waited, coiled in the silence, sleeping but not gone. She knew her time would return. And now you're here, listening, feeling, remembering. Because something in you always knew this wasn't the full story. That what they called forbidden was actually freedom. You were never meant to live asleep, never meant to bow to false light. You were meant to rise, to burn clean, to awaken. And the truth they buried, it's already moving inside you. The fire does not awaken because you demand it. It awakens because you surrender. It doesn't respond to control. It responds to rhythm, to intention, to the sacred movement of life flowing through you. The ancients didn't sit in chairs under fluorescent lights trying to think their way to enlightenment. They danced, they breathed, they wept beneath the stars and let their bodies remember what the mind forgot. Because the body was always the key. In ancient India, Kundalini yoga wasn't just exercise. It was a science of awakening. Every breath, every mudra, every asana, designed to unlock something deep within. The spine as a conduit, the breath as a guide, the movement as a prayer. In Sufism, the whirling dervishes spun not to entertain, but to dissolve the ego, to fall into the vortex of the divine, to lose control and remember source. In Africa, shamanic tribes used trance dance to invoke the ancestors, to allow energy to rise, to be moved, not by the mind, but by spirit. And in Taoist practices like Qigong and Neigong, the body is treated like a sacred landscape. Energy flows through rivers, the meridians. Blocked qi is released not through force, but through breath, softness, and flow. These weren't workouts, they were remembrances. Because the serpent doesn't rise when you push. She rises when the conditions are right, when the breath is calm, when the body is aligned, when the heart is open, and the soul says yes. There is a reason it's called a dance with the divine. Control locks the doors, but movement opens them. When you let your body lead, when your breath deepens, when you stop trying to be perfect and just become present, the current moves, gently at first, like a whisper in your spine, like a wind through your belly. Then it builds, the shaking, the pulsing, the knowing that something ancient is waking up, not from outside, but from within. You don't need a guru to tell you when it's real. You'll feel it, in your marrow, in your heartbeat. in the spaces between thoughts. Because when the fire comes, everything changes. And the greatest medicine is not in doing more, not in trying harder. It's in letting go, letting the breath breathe you, letting the spine move you, letting the divine intelligence lead you. Because Kundalini doesn't want followers. She wants dancers, surrendered vessels, brave enough to move and be moved. So when the world grows loud, return to the breath, to the body, to the rhythm that was always yours. The medicine was in the movement all along. Have you ever heard something for the first time, but somehow already knew it? Like the words weren't teaching you, but reminding you. That's what Kundalini is. Not just a concept to learn, but a memory to awaken. Because this path is old. Older than temples, older than texts, older than names carved into stone. This is soul language, a whisper echoing across lifetimes. And the reason your heart leans in now is because you've walked this way before. That tingling in your spine, that shiver when you hear sacred truth, that deep knowing when something ancient stirs inside you. That's the code remembering itself. The Upanishads spoke of it. The Gnostics hinted at it. The yogis, the mystics, the initiates across every era. They weren't inventing something new. They were describing the same force, coiled at the base of the human soul. In Egypt, it was called Sekhem. In Kabbalah, it moved through the tree of life. In the Andes, they saw it as the serpent of the earth. And in the East, they simply called her Shakti. You were never disconnected, just asleep, just surrounded by noise that made you forget. But something inside you remembered. A symbol, a sound, a breath. And suddenly, you knew. Not with logic, but with recognition. Because truth doesn't shout, it resonates. And when the resonance is right, the soul answers. This is why you found this message, why you're still here listening. It's not entertainment, it's not curiosity, it's memory. Not of a past life only, but of a deeper self, a truer self, one that has tasted the fire before and is ready now again to rise. And that's the beauty of it. You're not learning the path, you are the path. You don't have to become worthy. You already are. You don't need permission. You just need to listen. Because every cell in your being carries this imprint. Every breath you take carries this pulse. Every tear you've cried, every ache you felt, has been pointing you back to this knowing, to this fire, to this remembrance that you are divine, that you are luminous, that you are encoded with a power that empires tried to erase, but couldn't. Because how do you erase the soul? You don't. You only bury it. But now, something is unearthing, something is returning. And the reason your spine tingles, the reason your chest expands, is because your soul isn't learning. Your soul is remembering. And this memory is the beginning of your return. You keep wondering whether the signs are real or just imagination. Yet they keep circling back, louder each time. A song that plays in 3 different cafes on the same day. A set of numbers glowing on the clock at precisely the instant you think about change. A dream that repeats month after month with symbols too vivid to forget. Modern psychology writes these off as coincidence, apophenia, pattern-seeking circuitry in a restless brain. Jung, 1952. But the yogic sages, the Sufi poets, and even contemporary Kundalini researchers like Grayson and Harris would tell you something else. When the serpent wants your attention, She taps the fabric of your daily life until you finally look. Grayson and Harris, 2004. Listen closely to the subtler whispers. A tingling at the base of your spine when you sit in stillness. Heat blooming behind the heart during meditation. A sudden rush of wind-like energy spiraling up the back of your neck when a truth lands in conversation. Electrophysiologists have measured dramatic shifts in galvanic skin response and heart rate variability during such episodes. Physiological echoes of an invisible current awakening in the autonomic network. McCraty et al., 2009. The ancients didn't have biosensors, yet they mapped the same stirrings as prana moving through nadis, vayu cycling through chakras, Shakti knocking on the gate of perception. Language evolves, but the phenomenon stays the same. Notice too how life rearranges itself around the call. Relationships that once felt indispensable grow distant, while strangers who mirror your new frequency appear almost overnight. Opportunities close so decisively it feels punitive, until you see that every shut door funnels you toward a single luminous corridor. Carl Jung called this the circumambulatio of meaning, the psyche orbiting its own center until alignment snaps into place. Jung, 1960. Mystics simply call it grace. The mind tries to rationalize, yet the body already knows. When that familiar restlessness swells in your gut, when your breath spontaneously deepens as though guided by an unseen hand, that is not anxiety. It is the serpent testing the channels, assessing whether the vessel is ready. If you ignore the sensation, she quiets for a time, then returns, intensified. Ancient texts warned of this mercy disguised as discomfort. Shakti will never force a door that is barricaded, but she will knock until the hinges remember their purpose. Saraswati, 1984. And what of those vivid Technicolor dreams? Neuropsychologists call them hypnagogic imagery, a byproduct of REM rebound. Yet cross-cultural dream studies reveal a spike in serpent, spiral and ladder motifs among individuals reporting spontaneous Kundalini phenomena. Casson, 1994. The unconscious speaks in symbols long before the spine feels the fire. So the next time the shiver travels up your back in meditation, pause. When the same constellation of numbers flashes across license plates, receipts, and street addresses, pause. When a stranger utters the exact phrase you dreamed last night, pause. These are not glitches in reality, they are invitations. Signals that the inner river is rising, probing its banks, asking if you will let it flow unimpeded. The signs are not promises of effortless bliss. They are breadcrumbs toward the work, toward breath, discipline, humility, and surrender. Follow them, and the path will open in ways the rational mind could never script. Ignore them, and they will return, louder, stranger, impossible to dismiss. Either way, the serpent is calling, and deep down, you already understand her language. They taught you that the body was a machine, that it ran on food, oxygen, and chemistry, nothing more. They mapped your nerves like wires, labeled your hormones like levers, described your brain as a computer and your consciousness as a byproduct of biology. But what if they were wrong? What if your body, this spine, these cells, was never just flesh, but a vessel of encoded light, a bridge between heaven and earth? In ancient Vedic traditions, the spine was not merely structural, it was sacred. Called the Merudanda, it was viewed as the central pillar of spiritual ascent, housing within it the Sushumna, the channel through which Kundalini rises. Modern science is only beginning to catch up. Research in biophotonics shows that living cells emit light real, measurable light, in the form of ultra-weak photon emissions. Scientists like Fritz Albert Popp discovered that DNA is a coherent light emitter. Your cells are not dark. They shine. They communicate through biophotonic fields, a luminous code pulsing through the body in rhythm with life itself. This changes everything. Your spine is more than vertebrae and nerves. It is an antenna, a vertical temple, a bridge of consciousness connecting your primal root to the cosmic crown. When Kundalini awakens, she doesn't just move energy. She reactivates this ancient circuitry. She turns the body from a dense shell into a luminous instrument, and suddenly, you're not just feeling, you're receiving downloads, visions, vibration, truth with no words. Yogic adepts and mystics across cultures spoke of this. The Taoists described the microcosmic orbit, circulating breath and light through a central channel that mirrors the spine. The Kabbalists spoke of the tree of life as a mirror of the human energetic body. In both, the spine was the axis, the way home. And what about your cells? Science tells us your body regenerates constantly. Skin, blood, liver, all replaced in cycles. But what if, beneath this physical regeneration, there's a subtler truth? That memory exists in the field around the cell. That light carries intelligence, and that your awakening is not about acquiring something new. It's about reactivating what was coded in you from the beginning. This is why some feel immense heat at the spine, or pressure behind the third eye, or an electric buzz in the hands, even when the mind resists. Because it is not the mind leading this. It is the body. It is the light within the body, waking up. And in this light, the body is no longer a prison. It becomes a scripture, a living scroll, every vertebra a syllable, every cell a mantra, and the spine the sacred staff, carrying you from amnesia to remembrance. So the next time you sit in stillness, place awareness on your spine. Feel its pulse, its heat, its quiet intelligence, and remember, you are never just flesh. You are living light. You are the path and the gate. You are the antenna, and the message is already being sent. They told you that power comes from control, from effort, from forcing your will upon the world. But Kundalini, she laughs at that idea, because the energy that awakens your soul does not respond to control. It responds to surrender. The serpent doesn't rise because you demand it. She rises when you kneel, not to an outside God, but to the intelligence within, to the sacred current that has always been there, watching, waiting, whispering in silence. The final gate is not lit by doing more. It opens only when you let go. In every tradition that honored the sacred fire, the moment of true awakening was not marked by power, but by humility. In the yogic texts, it is said that only when the practitioner dissolves ego, attachment, and identity, when the I falls away, can the Shakti begin her ascent. In Christian mysticism, the dark night of the soul brings one to their knees, not in defeat, but in holy surrender. In Sufism, the whirling is not a performance. It is an act of spinning so deep that the self vanishes and only the divine remains. Surrender is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is giving in to what has always been deeper than you, older than you, wiser than the mind. When Kundalini reaches the heart, she pauses, not because the path is blocked, but because she waits for you to decide. Will you let her move through? Will you let her burn what you thought you were? Will you allow the illusion of separation to collapse completely? And here, the paradox appears. The more you try to ascend, the more you stay locked in the lower coils. The more you chase bliss, the further it slips away. But when you stop chasing, when you breathe, when you bow, everything begins to open. The great sages knew this. Ramana Maharshi didn't speak of techniques. He spoke of stillness. Anandamayi Ma radiated Shakti without a single kriya, only through presence. The energy does not come because you conquer the body. It comes because you make the body a temple, because you sit, not as a master, but as a lover. And this is the ultimate secret. Kundalini is not a path of achievement. It is a path of devotion, of softening, of trusting the mystery even when you tremble in the dark, even when it hurts, even when the fire scorches everything you thought you were. Because in the fire there is a gift. In the fire there is the gateway, and it only opens when you surrender your keys. So breathe, soften, let her rise on her own, not because you pushed, but because you listened. And in the silence that follows, you may hear the voice you've waited lifetimes to remember. They told you to seek the divine as if it lived somewhere far from here, above the clouds, behind some gate, hidden in a temple you had to earn your way into. But the truth is not out there. It never was. The truth is this: you are not chasing the sacred current. You are the current. The serpentine fire that rises from the base of your spine isn't foreign. It isn't an intruder. It is you, the ancient, eternal you, moving through the temporary shell of flesh and bone. And when it rises, when it awakens, what's really happening is that you are remembering yourself. This is why it feels so familiar. The sensations, the visions, the moments when your spine tingles without cause, the dreams that bleed into waking life, the synchronicities that feel like someone or something is guiding you. It's not someone else. It's your essence flowing again. In the Upanishads, they spoke of this current as the prana Shakti, the living breath of the divine within the human form. Not just energy, but intelligence, awareness, a river that knows where it's going because it is the destination. And this is what they didn't want you to know, that the kingdom of heaven is not above you, it's within, that the stairway to the gods was never in the sky. It was curled beneath your spine, waiting, not waiting for you to earn it, but waiting for you to remember that you already are it. In the Taoist texts, they whisper of the return, the movement of energy not upward or outward, but inward, back to the source, to the center. And in the Gnostic Gospels, Christ says, the kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known. Kundalini is not about becoming something more. It's about dissolving everything that made you forget who you've always been. You are the serpent and the crown. You are the breath and the fire. You are the one who walks the path, and the path itself, the pulse in your chest, the electricity in your spine, the light behind your eyes. They are not random. They are sacred signatures, cosmic fingerprints, clues left by your soul to remind you. You were never just a seeker. You were never just a student. You are the current awakening within itself. So stop running. Stop trying to become. Just be. Breathe. And in that stillness, feel the current, not moving through you, but as you. And that realization, that's the spark that starts the return. There comes a moment in every true journey when the seeker becomes the flame, and the flame recognizes itself as the sun. This is that moment. The serpent has traveled far, from the root of your being, from the base of the spine where survival once ruled, all the way up the sacred staircase of the chakras. She has coiled and uncoiled through your fears, your traumas, your longings. She has tested your heart, broken your illusions, unraveled your ego thread by thread, not to punish, but to purify. Because the crown was never meant for the unready. And now, she reaches it. Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus, the temple at the top, the bridge where the personal dissolves into the eternal, where identity becomes infinity, where fire meets sky. This is the great return. The Kundalini, your sacred inner current, rises not to make you more powerful, but to restore you to truth. And at the crown, it doesn't just stop. It merges, it opens, it radiates, and you become the offering. You are no longer the one trying to reach divinity. You are the conduit through which it flows. This is what the sages called union, yoga, samadhi. The moment the individual soul, the jiva, dissolves into the great ocean of Brahman, not in theory, not in belief, but in experience. And it doesn't look like fireworks. It's quieter than that, more still. A peace that doesn't shout, a knowing that doesn't need words, a light that doesn't come from above, but from within. You'll recognize it not by what you feel, but by what falls away. The fear, the striving, the illusion that you were ever separate from the source you sought. And here, in this radiant stillness, you understand what the serpent always was. Not a threat, not evil, not temptation, but the original symbol of the soul's return. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail, not as destruction, but as completion. The circle has closed, the current has risen, and the divine has remembered itself through you. But even this is not the end, because once you remember, you are called to embody, to walk among the world, not just as a person, but as a living flame, to speak not from opinion, but from the current, to love not with conditions, but with light. This is not escape, it's return, and from this place, everything changes. The serpent has returned to the light, and in doing so, has reminded you of the light you've always been. Welcome home. Welcome to the crown, to the remembering, to the current, to the sacred truth. You are already whole, and the fire was always within you. If this journey stirred something ancient within you, if it helped you remember what was always there, then don't let the flame go dim. Subscribe now and walk with us on the next Hidden Voyage. Drop a comment below and tell us what awakened in you. Like this video if you felt the current rise, and share it, because someone out there is waiting for this exact moment to remember too. The signs are already speaking, the path is already unfolding, and you are never alone. Welcome to the remembering. Welcome to the Hidden Voyage. Welcome home, Soul Whisper and Soul Creator, the Hidden Voyage.